Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get started. It's my pleasure to welcome those of you that are attending tonight to our informational town hall. I'm joined with a number of administrators, and we'll take just a few seconds to introduce them. Up here at the table, we have our instructional administrators from our district office. We have Dave Hoffman, our Chief Academic Officer, Meredith Penner, our Director of Teaching and Learning, Prakash Patel, our Director of Innovation and Technology, and Rita Perez, our Director of Conferences. In the audience, we have Chris Michener, Supervisor of STEM, Brina Vandergrift, Supervisor of Humanities. We have three of our elementary principals, Sean McLear, Jason Hamer, and Peter Alston. And we have our two secondary principals, Dan Ortiz and Bob Schultz. Thank you all for coming. As we go through the evening tonight, the evening's agenda is really based on some things that we want to share with you as district administrators. And we had a number of questions. We wanted to make sure that our time together tonight was driven by you and the community. So we want to thank everyone for taking the time to submit those questions. Questions covered a broad variety of topics. Mr. Hoffman is going to go through a number of slides tonight, and as we go through the slides, the questions that we had pre-submitted, we'll address those as we go through. At the end of that, there will be an opportunity for those of you in attendance to ask us any questions while we're here. We'll be putting together a frequently asked questions document that we'll publish and send out most likely next week or date. And just a couple of parameters tonight. We're not going to be able to answer any questions that are child-specific for confidentiality. So if you're going to ask a question, just know that if it's child-specific, that's a question that is directly to one of our administrators. But we'll be speaking in some generalities tonight that we get to the heart of the questions. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mr. David Hoffman, our Chief Academic Officer.
Good evening, everyone. To begin tonight, we wanted to focus a little bit about topics looking at professional learning, focusing on teaching and learning on in the district. In terms of professional learning for this year, this week we have professional learning on Thursday and Friday. And if you've been tuning into any of our education committee meetings or any of our social media posts, you see that we're using the phrase reimagining teaching and learning to empower all students. The idea of reimagining teaching and learning. One of the issues pre-pandemic was that schools learned, and most of the world learned, that we were not as future ready as we were thinking that we would be. When certain aspects shut down, we had to rethink. And so we do learn lessons that work, and also make sure that we're prepared for anything. The four areas that we've been using for all of our learning with teachers this year are these four central questions. Choice and voice. How does giving students choice and voice impact engagement? Pace and path. How does providing flexibility and pace provide equitable opportunities for all students? Assessment should be something we do with students, not to them. Why? And complacency is the enemy of progress. Why is change good when you look at how we're reimagining teaching and learning? So this week, we have these bigger activities focused for our teachers. One being Ms. Suzanne Daly from Teach Happier, staff, K-12 staff on Thursday. We have Dr. Catherine Delpard for looking at evidence-based learning conversations. So how do we look at data and provide feedback to that data? How do we use a cycle of inquiry to identify areas of focus? And how do we articulate our student experience? And so the graphic that's on this slide, and this slide we included with Dr. Tony's communication next week, is an example of the framework that we work with our principals in terms of improving instructional practices. So when we have a vision for effective instruction, we know what high quality instruction looks like. When we look at observation and analysis, we need to know how to observe and how to analyze students using. And finally, the support for teacher growth. How do we provide feedback that is useful to teachers, and how do we support teachers' professional learning? What our principals continue to discover is that mirrors the learning experience for teachers, what we want to offer our students. And so we're continuing to practice that as we work through. Ms. Penner is now going to talk a little bit about steps for communication and data review.
We thought it was important to include information about the steps of communication in our district. This information is housed on the website. You can see at the bottom of the screen share. You can find that on our homepage under communication resources. If you have a question about your child, about instruction, you don't have to wait for your next town hall. We really want to outline the order of communication based on the proximity to the environment and your child. So you'll see step one is often the teacher, the person who's directly involved in that interaction, that would likely have the most information. Often if a parent or a guardian contacts a central office administrator or a principal first out of heightened concern, then it slows down the response because we have to go back and get the information from all of the other people on that list in a chain of command. So we felt that it was important to review this slide tonight just to remind everybody that the district has a variety of people invested in everything we do with our kids, and this should help expedite your resolution and answers. One of the things we accelerated during the pandemic was really utilizing data in real time, whether it's formative assessment data, observational data about kids, to make immediate decisions about instruction. So our teachers often to follow the framework, what, so what, now what. We often use this in our meetings as leadership teams too, when we bring a topic. Here's what the topic is, here's what the data is, what does that mean? So if we're looking at statewide assessment data, and we see scores, and we see pockets of students who are not performing to the level that we wish they were, what does that mean? What do we do next? So we ask teachers to look at the curriculum and instruction, to look at that everyday data, to look at the scope and sequence of their courses, and to really refocus and replan what that instruction might look like the next day or the next. We really keep reiterating we're teaching kids, we're not teaching programs. So if the students need us to back up, speed up, we need to be flexible and make those adjustments based on the information in front of us.
We had some questions about and I'll ask you, Dr. President, if you have anything to add after that, but how the concept of UDL and some of the basic principles of UDL are being used data and information that we have from students.
Sure. So one of the professional learning options we had for teachers this year was a book that was authored by Untitled Chapter. Katie Novak is a leader in the field right now in universal design learning. Reviewers often say the words blended learning, and there's a lot of overlap and integration of the two schools of thought, and they're not overly different. So when universal design of learning focuses on multiple means of how students engage in instruction, multiple means of how they demonstrate their understanding of a concept, and multiple means how they engage. So when we think about some of the things we're putting into practice in our classrooms through our work, we're looking at things like choice boards. Students have the options to watch a video, they have the option to read a text, they have the option to read different kinds of text with the same content and standard being assessed. So we find students are often more engaged when they have those choices, and it eliminates some barriers that we may not know about or barriers that we do know about in a more inclusive Chris, did you want to add?
One of the questions that came in, we presented our data, our standardized test scores, PSSAs and Keystones, a few weeks ago, and our education. And some of those scores were not what we expect, not what we're proud of, not what we want to see moving forward. So either Mr. Can you address the new benchmarking system? And it seems that folks do not think there's a plan to work with students, get them to really to be, whether it's learning that didn't take place last year, or learning this year.
Sure. So in addition to the data, we have a new benchmarking system. We used it for the first time. So we have 3 points of data for students who have been with us since last spring. And that gives us a look at reading and math, and it gives us a look at overall proficiency and the grade level standards in those areas. When we look at that, it's a nationally normed benchmark assessment. It gives us a quick snapshot of our students considered above grade level, no risk, some risk, or high risk. And what we're looking at now as a leadership team and with principals is, does the data that we're getting from EasyCBM align and help support the data that we're getting from PSSA and other means of assessment? So we're looking at it not in isolation, but in addition to our other pieces of data. One of the things we like about this benchmark assessment is that it allows teachers in a very quick second to click on a class, to click on an assessment, and to see how many students in that class missed each question and what types of questions did students typically miss. It allows them to do that. Here's what, so what, now what, to that in real time. The assessment, review the assessment, reteach, have students defend their answers, work together, and just use that data in real time to make meaningful changes. One of the things I think when we reviewed the PSSA data in alignment with our reading data and other sources of data, kids at the time demonstrating reading skills and abilities and reading behaviors in very short passages. I think one of the pieces we took away from the PSSA data review was that we're working on stamina. So our students are able to demonstrate skills in short passages with a teacher one-on-one. They hadn't had a lot of practice in the pandemic, and I'm happy about that, to read one by themselves, very lengthy passages, and then go back and shop and look for answers to this question. So one of the things we're asking teachers to build into their instruction, not to teach to the test, but to practice ways that kids can build reading stamina and to teach kids strategies to more independently go back in longer passages and find answers and defend them.
So, Ms. Penner, I want to dissect some of the things that you said, just for some of the people that might not have previously attended an ed committee or attended our legislative meeting. So we talked about a benchmarking system that we call CBM. So that benchmarking system is given to students in grades K through 8, and given in literacy and mathematics. And the literacy component focuses on everything from early literacy skills, the basics of phonics, through more complex reading tasks. Likewise, in math, we go from early numeracy through more complex mathematics. In the past, we used a product called STAR Renaissance Assessments. Those assessments were very brief. They were about 10 minutes. They were adaptive, and as students got answers correct, the test became harder. And as students incorrectly answered questions, the test would reset and get a little bit easier. One of the things that we found was the length of those assessments was such that we were getting skewed results. So students would take one of those 10-minute reading assessments and they would get a reading level of 8th or 9th grade when they were in elementary school. We weren't seeing that validated by our own reading assessment that we do one-on-one with kids called BASS, the benchmark assessment system. Life is not adaptive. PSSAs are not adaptive. We wanted to go with see CBM because it is nationally normed. So we can see how our students are performing as compared to their same peers across the country who have taken the same assessment. One of the things that I think is great, or that gives CBM great power, as Ms. Penner described, is the ability to look at individual questions and the way questions are asked. Sometimes kids have skills, but they get confused by how questions are asked. And so we're able to do an item analysis. The other biggest thing is we really dug into our PSSA data in reading. I mentioned that we do something called the BAS, Benchmark Assessment System, which gives us a reading level for kids. That's a true, authentic assessment. It's done one-on-one. The stamina that kids need for reading on the PSSA, as an example, is that they might have to read a 4-page story and answer 2 or 3 questions about it, and then read another 4-page story. So as Ms. Penner said, we're being very deliberate about building stamina. We build reading stamina in kids from the time they're in kindergarten. It's the ability to read independently for a while. We shifted our focus in older grades to be able to build that stamina and have kids be able to respond to texts as we go along.
We're now going to hear very briefly from our curriculum supervisors on updates to K-12 writing and K-12 STEM. So earlier in the year, we presented about the K-12 writing framework and about the K-12 STEM integration. And so I just want both of our supervisors to share a little bit of update about where we are currently and where we're going next.
Hi. So as Mr. Hoffman said earlier this year, I did present at the Ed Committee a much more detailed version of this. So if you're interested, you can go back to the slides and see some more detail. But tonight, I just wanted to focus on the overall vision and give you an update of where we are. So when we're talking about the big vision of a K-12 writing framework, one of the main goals is that we want a scope of writing that can extend beyond the ELA classroom. Writing, all teachers are teachers of writing and reading, and writing should be happening in all classrooms. And we want teachers to understand the why and the how of writing cross-curricularly, and we've been chipping away at that this year as well. The goal of the writing framework is that it's going to lead to students learning how to present their ideas and thoughts in a variety of ways. And lots of different audiences. They have to be prepared to write in multiple ways for multiple audiences. A common district-wide process, we want to develop a vocabulary that is common. We want to have a vertical articulation of it all to make sure that it all comes together, and students are hearing the same language and the same expectations from teachers across curriculum and across grades. And there's also going to be the goal is to have a shift in writing culture. The goal is all students should be writing at least an hour a day. And that shouldn't just be happening in English class. It doesn't have to happen all at once in for long periods of time. Obviously, that has to be a part of it, but a minimum an hour a day for kindergarten. And in order for that to happen, we need to build that capacity in teachers. So it's a big picture, big goal. It's going to take some time, but we are definitely on the path to getting to where we want to be. So if I take a look at the K-5, K-5 is... Can
I ask you a question that came in? So earlier we talked about the fact that kids not programs. So many people say we should just do a writing program. Is there a reason for not having a writing program?
So right now we have F&P, the elementary level, and Fontes is a reading curriculum. I don't even like to call it a program that is filled with texts that are rich and get at the reading skills and the thinking skills that we want our students to have. The writing framework, purchasing another writing framework and putting it on top of that doesn't make sense, because in order for us to change the culture of writing in this district, it has to come from the teachers. They have to build the capacity, and they have to be able to change from year to year, they have to be able to have autonomy in what they're doing and believe in it, as opposed to being handed over, this is what they must do now, and this is the step. If you have capacity, no matter what we're using for curriculum and reading, that writing framework can move from year to year to year for decades, and teachers will have the knowledge and the capacity to be able to teach writing and grow writers and better thinkers if we develop that on our own.
I just want to insert one comment. I saw you. Am I not supposed to speak? So, as a former elementary teacher, I can say that elementary teachers in their undergraduate preparation do not get a ton of instruction on how to teach kids to write. Pre-service teachers are taught how to teach kids to read, how to teach early numeracy and math concepts. Elementary pre-service teachers are very rarely taught how to teach the act of writing. And writing is very intimidating. It's a conversation that's happening all around the region right now, because every district is looking at how we're instructing and writing and how we're moving students from the early onset of writing, where in kindergarten they're literally doing scribbles and doing all of their writing with pictures, to the point that we have kids writing a research paper in 12th grade and a college essay. And writing is a really complex process. Sometimes people say, well, it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science, but you have to know the way the brain is wired in order to know how to really teach writing and to have that writing stick. And so what I'm appreciative of Ms. Vandergrift is that we're not just buying a writing program. We're actually building capacity in teachers. I think some folks say, well, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, it seemed like the writing was better. Over the years, as standards have shifted, what has happened is writing has either intentionally or unintentionally taken a back seat, because we've been so focused on reading and responding to reading. We're there with reading and responding to reading now. But reading is thinking. And if we can develop our teachers to become good teachers of writing, we can teach kids to be good consumers and producers of writing.
Can't talk that. I just need to go back to the K-5, sorry. So where we're starting is we're starting with the framework for K-5, while we're building some of that capacity throughout K through 12. To this point, for that date, as of tomorrow, I will have met with every grade level in every building to sit with the teachers, to have discussions writing, to share the K to 12 writing progression so they can see where are, like for example, in second grade, what skills should be being introduced, which one should be being developed, which one should be mastered. And taking a look at what that looks like K through 12. I'm also asking for feedback and learning from them what their successes are, what their struggles are. And ultimately what we're going to build to, and we're going to get at work this Friday, is we're going to be meeting in grade level. In grade levels, we're going to have grade level discussions from all 4 elementary buildings, and they're going to have discussions. They're going to dig into why writing matters. And one of the most significant resources we reference is a writing project, Why Writing Matters. Dig into all the reasons students should be writing across the curriculum, and it should just be happening in the ELA classroom. So we first want them to understand the why, and then we're going to talk about the how, and the how is going to take some time. We're definitely going to be providing professional development on that. But we need to decide where are our musts. So on Friday, we're going to talk about their successes, and they do the how and why it matters. What are the musts? And ultimately, what we're going to have to agree with from K to 5 is what should all teachers be doing in K to 5? What should that look like? And what kind of language and common vocabulary should we be using? And how are we going to vertically align that from K to 5? Students are growing their writing and thinking skills. Writing and thinking go hand in hand. And during that time, we're going to start talking about trimester, what should be happening during each trimester in writing. As far as K to 12, we've identified with them the K to 12 writing progressions, and they're sharing those. We have writing DS groups, which are groups of teachers who are meeting about the writing, and we are developing writing principles. So we want to have writing goals for the district, but they're going to start with what our beliefs are about writing, and that's going to guide our work. And then on Friday, each department's going to be meeting and digging into the same kind of work elementary teachers are digging into. And I'm also trying to promote this idea of writing across the curriculum with monthly emails titled The Right Way to Learn. And in there is an explanation of, for example, January's was the power of summarizing and what it's like in all classes and how it helps teachers to learn, or students to learn and grow.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Similar to Brina, we presented at the COM meeting in November. So if you want more details, you can certainly go back to look at it. But a couple of highlights in terms of STEM integration. What you see on the screen here are our long-term goals for STEM in the district. Obviously, Pennsylvania standards. Mr. Hoffman mentioned that there are science standards coming down the pike, so we're going to make sure we integrate those. We're going to look to make cross-curricular connections, prioritize skills over facts, STEM over crafts, and working with my colleague, Ms. Vandegrift, on aligning with the writing program. In a minute, I'm going to show one video that I can articulate this, but really working hard to shift the mindset that, yes, STEM as an acronym stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But we want STEM to be a skill that promotes the 21st century skills you see there on the screen. So if you'll indulge me for a moment, on the next slide, I'll just show you a 1 minute video. So to that end, we're doing the work through various differential vision projects, ranging from STEM and vision for the district to technology skills and a curriculum map, grade level STEM activities, library specialist collaboration. Long story short, integrating STEM skills, in all curricular areas to make it a mindset of our district. The next slide, we were fortunate as a district a couple of years ago to get an Ed Foundation grant to STEM kits for kindergarten classrooms. We extend that initiative to all kindergarten classrooms, and what you see on the screen are the products that kindergartners made in our first November House STEM Challenge competition. And on the next slide, that ends tomorrow. I can't reveal the winners for the competition yet, but tomorrow we'll start evaluating the February snowman competition. Our kindergartners are loving it, the teachers are loving it. The idea is to start with kindergartners and move through and keep these STEM challenges and initiatives going through the years.
So thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I'm ask you to stay there for just a second. We did have some questions that I'll answer also too. So one of the questions that we received is about the new high school schedule, why we are requiring STEM electives, and the community member that's wanted to know, is it a requirement? Is it a state requirement? Why are we moving in this?
Thank you for the question. So it's very much tied to increase high school graduation requirements in 21 credits to 24 overall. The 21 currently exist: 4 English, 4 social studies, 3 are math, 3 are science. That's the minimum requirement in the state of Pennsylvania in math and science, as opposed to specifically requiring more students to take classes in math or science, which is what most districts do. We want to give students the opportunity to not only take math and science classes as part of the new schedule, but to also take areas of interest in elective courses and meet the same thing. So, for instance, if a student has completed math, science graduation requirements, wants to take a computer science class, that is an elective offering that would count towards STEM. There are also a couple in allied arts and other areas. More than anything, what we are trying to produce at Upper High School is well-rounded students who are taking a balance of courses. And while we understand that interest and choice will drive a lot of what the schedule ultimately looks like, we want to make sure that there is a balance between, as per the past 2 speakers, the STEM side and the humanities side.
Thanks, Mr. Schultz. And Mr. Mitchell, one of the other questions was, what sort of look is being done at the curriculum to prepare kids maybe for careers that might not even exist right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it ties right to my philosophy on STEM being a collection of skills and not tasks. A lot of times in the past, when we talk STEM, we talk science, we talk math, we talk about isolated activities, craft. Sorry, I'm reverting back to some terminology. You do a craft, and we call it was an inquiry activity. But as I learned in our November PLE session for the DS participants, just doing a craft where you're building a house or you're building whatever it is you're building, it's not really producing the skills that are needed. We need to tie math to that competition. What's the cost of these materials? How do you work? How do you present your findings? How do you make sales or something to those lots of thinking? So, a collection of skills, a collection of topics, really does allow us to broaden our perspectives and prepare students for, to that point, jobs that don't exist yet.
Thank you.
To add on to STEM, I like how the Commissioner said skills, not subjects. We will be offering a STEM Academy this summer, and we are offering this for students grades K through 12, different bands, K 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9 through 12. A 2-week opportunity open to all kids, and it will run Mondays through Thursdays, and we're finalizing hours and will be coming out soon. I'm excited about this. Cover any content area, so it's not just science and math, it's a lot of different skills and building those STEM overlays with a very fun creative academy. So we're excited for the teachers to see who they're going to be and excited to build this program.
And we'll be funding that through
Yes, this is part of the ARP ESSER learning loss allocations. One of the buckets for that is an 8% that has to be designated for school programs and sub-programs. So this will be the 8% that we designate for summer.
I think it's really important to note that the pandemic in February 2020, we were working with the Upper Dublin Education Foundation on some ideas around summer program. As we know, the world changed a little bit for a lot. So it's great that we're able to bring this back. What I hope, although it's through ESSER ARP this summer, I'm hopeful that we can build it into our budget moving forward. That takes us to the end of some of the slides that we have there. Were a couple questions that were not answered that pre-submitted, so I want to go over those. And we will have the opportunity for those of you that are in attendance tonight if you would like to come up to the microphone and ask some questions. So we mentioned about doing a new benchmark system called CDM, and Ms. Petter, can you talk about how or when or in what fashion we will communicate the results to families?
Sure. So similar to the way of describing CDM and the results and how we're asking teachers to analyze that data, use it to inform all data together into one spot and has a feature of a parent portal that we're looking to explore so we can have real-time data available to parents throughout the year. Any student that is receiving intervention or is thought to be in need of something more support than's available in the general education class or needs a specialist intervention, those parents are notified and that information is shared. Also, any parent that wishes to get information about any of these data sources to have conversations with school or encourage to reach out to school basically to have conversations about what that is, circling back to the here's what, so now what is the teacher's action to support that student, and how can families help support that at home. So that answered most of the pieces of that.
Mr. Hoffman, one of the questions that came in, we have Alex that we use as a adaptive tool in math. The question raises some concern about the overuse of math. So can you talk a little bit, or can you answer what is the district's recommendation in terms of how teachers will use Alex?
So Alex is a math tool that we're currently using. It's designed to and teachers used it previously in previous years for a different reason. We now have it for Math 6 through Algebra 2 teachers with the purpose of helping us identify the areas of need that are specific to people. And Alex helps the student and teacher set a goal in that area and do additional practice in that area to bring that goal up to speed. Anyone who's heard me at an ed committee meeting knows how I feel about every student doing work problem. I believe very strongly that we accelerate learning for all students every day. And when we're focusing on the same 40 problems for every child, we're forgetting students on either end. There's 40 problems yet, or maybe beyond those 40 problems. And so Alex is helping us meet and identify areas of need or goal areas, and we're students on filling that gap and moving forward. I would say this year, because our current Algebra 2 students, for example, they had Algebra 1 last year during the hybrid school year, and they had a pre-algebra that was short. And so using it more than I would anticipate in a typical year, but we're using it to
One of the other questions that I will address, there was a question asked about, we've seen strife across the country about history and social studies curriculum. We're very thoughtful about how we purchase for our libraries, our classroom libraries. We also have a scope of needs for social studies, so we believe that all history is important, and we will continue teaching all aspects of history. It's really important to note that most textbooks are written for two states, Texas. And so as a district, we have moved away from reliance on commercial products for social studies. We're focusing much more on primary and secondary sources, so historical texts, historical documents, historical artifacts, rather than relying on simply learning history through a textbook. So I think that covers the questions, the wide variety of questions. There were a number of questions about masks, and I want to take this opportunity to address where we are with masks. Over the summer, we developed a health and safety plan, and that health and safety plan, in that plan, it says that we will have required universal masking when the transmission rates are in the substantial or high range. And the ranges that are in the health and safety plan are or were developed by the Montgomery County Office of Public Health. Over the last couple of weeks, we've started to see a big shift in the COVID numbers. Internally, our numbers are very low. The numbers are starting to come down. They're trending in the right direction in our municipality. So in our district's footprint, and we update every Tuesday. We are continuing to work not only with the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, but also with the CHOP Policy Lab, and also superintendents being together to talk about the best recommendations that we can make to our boards about moving forward. Some of you know, or if you've been paying attention to the news, there have been 3 lawsuits filed in the Commonwealth about universal masking. 2 of them were in Western Pennsylvania. 1 of them was the district here in Montgomery County. 2 cases in Western Pennsylvania were dismissed. The judges in the case did not believe that there was sufficient reason to move forward. Last night, I was simply able to read the 60-page decision that came from the case in a neighboring school district. For many reasons, we need a legal opinion on our path forward, because the opinion that has been levied is that there were 4 students that were immunocompromised, and even though they've not yet, quote unquote, been harmed, the judge is requiring that district stay universally masked until such time that the COVID data really improves. So we typically communicate out on Tuesdays. As we get this legal opinion, and we work with the Office of Public Health and the Policy Lab, we may, operative word may, M-A-Y, may release a communication over the next couple of weeks that isn't necessarily on a Tuesday if there is any seismic shift in any of our processes. As you can imagine, I've gotten a lot of emails saying that masking should be optional. And for every email that comes in that says that masking should be optional, I'm getting emails that say, we're not there yet. We will remain in touch with the community to let you know if or when we're going to make those changes. And with that, I will, if anyone in the audience has questions, please feel free to come up to the microphone, state your name so we know who we're talking to, and limit it to 1 or 2 questions, and then to give other people a turn, and then we can cycle through again.
Anita Brister. Is it Anita Brister? Is that better? Fort Washington. So we have 4 minutes. Is that what you said? Are we still at 4 minutes, or do you want questions? What did you say?
This is your dream come true. There's no time limit. However, if you limit it to 1 to 2 questions, Mrs. Brister, that would be great.
All right, I got to prioritize here. I have to use my critical thinking skills. All right, so this is just something that has bothered me for, I don't know, 5 years or so. There were a lot of curriculum changes under Dr. Wheeler. And some of them I totally don't understand. I'm not supposed to ever talk about them in public, but they had direct spelling instruction when they were in Upper Dublin. I personally feel that's really important, and somehow, I don't know why Dr. Wheeler and her team thought it was a good idea, but it seems like kids in Upper Dublin no longer have direct spelling instruction. I've talked to parents that have older kids versus younger kids. The older kids had it, and they can spell. Imagine that. And the younger kids didn't get it. My personal opinion, and in the dark ages of my life, or the young ages of my life, I was a teacher for 10 years, private school. I feel spelling instruction builds fluency in math and reading and writing. I mean, not math, sorry. Well, unless you have a math problem. Reading and writing. You cannot be good at writing if you have to look up every word on spell check. So I would just like to know, could the district consider bringing that back? Or if you don't think it's important to bring it back, what am I missing? Is it true that spelling is just no longer important? Because I saw my kids learn to spell, and it helped with every other piece of the English curriculum. And another thing that really bothered me, and parents came and questioned this at meetings, again under Dr. Wheeler, not to name names, it seemed to become optional to return tests to students or not return tests to students. I think, again, what is the purpose of a test? To me, it was always to identify strengths and weaknesses. And that's what I said to my kids. We just want to identify strengths and weaknesses. Okay, I know they're pressure, nobody likes them. But I'll give an example. Again, I'm not going to talk about my kids. They're adults. They like their privacy, but they won't be watching this. So one kid, who shall remain nameless, did pretty poorly on an end-of-year exam. And mom said, you did pretty poor. I didn't know it until like June or July when the report cards came home. I said, you did pretty poorly on this. You're going to need it on the SATs. I think we need a tutor. I'm going to call and request the test. And I had to go through 3 people, shall remain nameless, because they didn't do the test. But in general, other tests went home all the time. But I did the test, worked with the tutor. The kid did pretty well on the SATs. So that was my intervention as a parent. If I had just said, hey, it's pretty bad in this subject, too bad it's going to be on the SATs and you'll bomb it, would that have been good for the kid? No. Would it have been good for the district? No. So not returning tests, and that particular test was an end-of-year exam. I get that that could fall into a slightly different category, but my kids got almost, I say 96% of their tests were given back. Teachers wanted to give them back. They wanted parents to look at it, see if they needed improvement in something. And they were told, definitely in high school, my kids were told, save these and study from them for your midterms and your final, which I think that was good teaching and learning. So that's all I want to understand. Thanks.
So I'll address the spelling. While Mr. Schultz, I'll let Mr. Schultz up the microphone to address some of the follow-up questions I have about testing. But when you look at orthography, which is the science of spelling, there's been a really big shift over the last probably 7 to 8 years. You are correct that we don't have weekly spelling tests. I remember in 4th grade memorizing the patterns of the words, and so you memorize the pattern of the word and you get through the test, and there isn't really good carryover. A few years ago, there was an intentional push to bring foundations in at the K1 level, K1 and then to 2, grade 2. That does teach kids the foundations or the foundation of spelling. And Ms. Penner, are we looking at the foundational word study for grade and above?
Yeah, so I was going to say the same thing. It's integrated into the ELA 120, 150 minutes, depending for those classes. So we're not memorizing a list of 10 words to repeat on Friday. We're learning the code, phonics, decoding, and encoding, and applying that in the reading that happens authentically in the test.
Mr. Schultz, are we still adhering to the process or procedure that exams are not given back?
The short answer is, for the most part, yes, in areas where they are departmentalized exams. So if a teacher is giving her own quiz or a test, share them, that's fine, because the answers on those tests, the questions on those tests, etc., are not going to be given to another group of students on another date in another classroom. So for that reason, we do have some procedures that can be followed if someone would wish to see the test.
And what is the process if a student or a parent wants to see a hard copy of the assessment?
Contact the teacher. For the most part, we would prefer if the parent were able to come in and go over the test with the teacher. It's a much better mode of communication. But if it is important and inconvenient, the test can be sent home, but we do ask that people sign off for confidentiality purposes.
And are we asking teachers to review exams? So for example, kid does really poorly. I know we have SOAR time 8A, 8B. Are we asking teachers to spend time with kids going over that?
Yes.
Thank you.
So funny to go back and forth like that. I was all ready to come up without you answering right away. Chivitel Ambler. So along those lines, I have to say that it hasn't been quite my experience at high school. And one of my children gets the grade and that's it. Doesn't want to think about it 1 more second, doesn't care. And that's what I really wish someone would say, no, you need to actually learn this. And go over with that. So we talked about K through 12 rating progress. I was wondering if that's anywhere so we can look at what that progress is. If that's somewhere we can look up on the district page or anywhere, that would be great for the curriculum K through 12. What we expect of the children and what they're learning every year. That would be great. So writing, I found also that the writing seemed to be really bad, and because so much it goes into it, obviously the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling, the vocab. And I think one of the ways I personally learned to write was feedback. And one thing we're not necessarily experiencing is immediate and, rewriting it. No one's writing anymore. And it's like they read something on a Google sheet, not sheet, that's math, Google Doc, and then it's like changing, and they're not really thinking about it. I just don't think that I think there's a little bit of a disconnect in actually writing, circling, crossing out, and rewriting so it sounds better. Like someone writes a sentence and it's like a whole paragraph long, and it's like you could say that it's the exact same thing, and it sounds much better, and whatever. I don't know if it's that back and forth. And I was kind of wondering about the way through writing progress, because one of my concerns is I get with elementary K through 5, we all get a lot of school. That's a lot of school. But at least in elementary school, you're with your same teacher every day. They tell kind of where you are and what you've missed. But what I worry is for 6 through 12, because I feel like my 6th grader may have lost a lot of learning in some of these aspects of math, or math a little less, but in the writing, the punctuation, the grammar, the text analysis and all that. But how are we going to supplement that person, student who missed like a whole year? Because I know like in 8th grade it's a lot of writing, and I know in 7th grade it's a lot of reading, or whatever it is. And like, how do we make up for that lost time for that grade from the 6 through 12 kind of grade? Because they kind of seem to not be the same flow. It's like in directions. And Alex, I have to say, is not liked by many students that I've heard. And I believe, and this is my question, is there still like a whole class running that Algebra 1? Is that literally the class is all taught via Alex? I believe there still is. And what bothers me about Alex and what I've seen is frustration in students. You go from Eureka in elementary school where you're constantly writing, which also adds frustration, constantly writing every single thing down. And then you go to Alex and it's like they're writing nothing down. It's like, oh, okay, I'll click this. Oh, it's wrong. Oh, I'll ask for advice and whatever. So I don't know if it's sinking in, because it's just like just to get through those 2 questions. It's not really a thoughtful and learning process. That's what I've just observed. And the social studies, and I know I have too many questions, that's why I'm trying to talk clearly and fast. The social studies, you mentioned that we don't use textbooks per se, but if every teacher is able to grab their own sources, are we then not necessarily consistent? So then what you learn and the lens you learn that through depends on your teachers.
I'll start with the last question and work backwards. So despite not using a textbook, there is still teaching the same curriculum. So we might be using primary and secondary sources, but we're not using different primary. We might use slightly different primary and secondary resources, but the skills and the concepts are the same across a course. So whether you have Dave Hoffman or Steve Yanni for social studies, you're getting that common experience. We do not have an Algebra 1 class, to my knowledge, that is full, Alex. That was the case several years ago, and the team, the launch team, whatever it was called at that time. And at the end of the year, we made the intentional decision that that was not the direction to go, because it's not Alex with the teacher supplementing it, it's the teacher giving instruction with Alex to supplement. Did I say that correctly? All right, good. In terms of the writing continuum, I believe that Ms. Vandergrift will most likely unveil that in a document sometime this spring as it's finalized. But the feedback portion is probably the biggest thing that we can give, that we can give to kids, not just in writing, but really in anything, to give, because if it's specific, almost immediate, it's not worth giving. And so one of the things that Vandergrift is doing particularly well is building that capacity in teachers so that they feel comfortable giving that feedback.
Being in some EL classrooms and watching teachers give feedback in the writing process, there's a lot of mixed emotions about the use of digital resources, but listening to you about crossing out and rewriting from a universal time perspective and watching feedback in real time and adherence with health and safety plan and restrictions, the ability of a teacher when a student's writing in a Google Doc to give an immediate comment and an audio comment so kids can listen to it, or kids to highlight their text and listen to it back, and the teacher will ask a follow-up question, did that sound right? Or peer-to-peer review, where the peer reviews it in one color and the student writing is writing in another color, and they're giving suggestions and feedback. I think what's nice about that is they have that immediate part to your child. You shared the example of they don't want to go back and fix it. It's happening at the end of the process. It's happening during and throughout. I think the students' sort of acceptance of that feedback and willingness to revise the process, we're seeing a higher level engagement. Some of our teachers are more savvy, using some fun tricks that like you're messaging on the side, like in a chat box, and kids are just drawn and a little bit more engaged in that space at their level.
I'll just add one thing because I like to have the last word, let's be honest. Is that why you were waiting? We're all going to be in a string, and we don't want students' experience to be 100% sitting with a Chromebook in front of them.
Johnson. I'm from Ambler, Washington. 2 kids in Fort Washington, 2 more coming up soon. I had a quick question. I wasn't sure exactly what I can ask teacher as far as your child's assessments. So I just, if you could give like 1 minute talking about LinkedIn. I was just curious, explain like the CPM. Is it going to talk about like now, like will you know what level your child is as they grow, or especially with the PSSAs trying to balance out how fits together. We see like a picture of your child over a continuum in real time through that program, or not really. Right now, my child is a parent that I'm allowed to ask. I just like sneak it myself, check on my.
You want to ask your child, and I think like the way you asked the question, because asking the teacher who is the one sitting with your child, giving that assessment, and is then the one with your child every day, or multiple times a week doing guided reading, and it's listening to your child read, the best person to give you the interpretation of that data, back to the next steps, to tell you what they're going to be working on next, and to make recommendations for the way you can support at home. Sometimes parents know to read at home. We used to do the reading log. You had to sign off on 20 minutes a night. But I think we're getting better at asking parents, especially with certain instructional levels in reading, to ask different types of questions. So the Fontes and Pinnell talks about questions that are within the text, about the text, and beyond the text, and to model some of those questions for parents who might have advanced readers, but while they may be able to code a high-level instructional text, they might not always be able to do the critical thinking associated with it. So they can help on both ends.
So with Lincoln,
So link it,
data input
link
or
it's a
not?
data warehouse right now that the district has where we look at triangulation of data, considering and reviewing their parent portal, and we'll have more information once we do that. You can get instructional level from your best from your teacher, have the teacher walk you through these, EBM. Like I said, right now, if we sent home information about your child that said low risk, it doesn't really paint a picture or tell a whole story. So I think the best route is to contact the teacher.
And as we think about conferences, particularly at the elementary level, being able to sit with the teacher and say, okay, here's your daughter's easy CBM results, and here is the BAS result, and then here's what I'm seeing on a daily basis. It gives you a complete picture of your child. And then from there, the teacher can suggest, here are things you might want to do at home, or here are some things that we're working on in class that might be a little bit frustrating. With some extra practice, the child can exhibit the skill.
You could make the conference just a little bit longer.
Don't tell anybody, but I agree. Ms. Vandergriff, could you elaborate just for a second on when we'll
I just want to clarify, this K-12 writing framework is not going to happen overnight. It can't. Changing the culture of writing, building a framework that makes sense is going to take 2 to 3 years. Can we make a lot happen in the first year? Absolutely. What we're doing right now is we're working with the different supervision groups, the teachers who signed up through the hours to work on writing framework, beginning with what is writing important. We're asking more feedback from teachers on Friday. We created a large list of our priorities, which we're going to be calling the writing principles. Ultimately, from this principle, we're going to create goals. That is not going to be finalized until the work that we're doing this summer. So do I have tons of drafts of ideas? Yes. Do I know where to start with all the priorities and goals? No, because there are too many. We have to decide as a group what matters. How we're going to get there. That's going to take time, but we're moving as quickly as we can. But we're doing it well, and it's going to take some time. Training, we're taking a look at their needs, we're identifying what the needs are. K through 5 teachers sitting with each other and with me this summer to create that vertical curriculum and to make some decisions about what we all do so that we're all on the same page. At that time, I'm hoping sometime in August, I'm working away at this plan so that we can have a nice version of it on the district website as a beginning, so you have a bigger picture, a big idea of where we're going.
And in the meantime, we do have the K-12 writing progression charts that are state-aligned through SAS. That
Yes, we do. Now,
we can
I do
get
have
that linked.
some materials I can post, and I guess we'll work on deciding what those materials are. So there's a lot we've been working on. We just have to decide what makes sense to put up there now. The other piece I wanted to address is there's a question about feedback. For 5+ years, we have been doing a ton of work around the importance of feedback as work unfolds, whether it's writing or projects. If we're not providing feedback as work unfolds, then in the end, they're just getting a grade and feedback that kids will, and we know some of them will look at it and eat it up, and others will be like, got an A, done. Or, I got a B, that's fine, I'll still get an A for the, they are so stressed and so overwhelmed with everything they're doing. They're just looking for, okay, what do I need to do next sometimes? And we have to help them to get there. So we have done a lot of training on the importance of feedback as work unfolds in every subject area. I see it happening a lot. I'm not saying that it's not happening in pockets. I hope it's not. But the process piece is more important than the end piece. So I just wanted you to know that that is something that we will continue to preach, encourage, train teachers to do.
Thank you.
And I would just say, Dr. Yanni, that these become expectations, and part of our work with Dr. Betty Webb is helping us, as I said on that slide, to inspect what we expect. And so, as that is an expectation that teachers are giving feedback when, the high school team is in high school classroom seeing writing, they're looking for that, they're collecting evidence of that, and they're providing specific feedback on that. And when that's not happening, that becomes an issue that we look to support, whether that's a need for professional learning or further communication about, planning and implementation. So that is something that connects to the work that we're doing as administrators.
So as our time draws to a close here, I'd really like to thank everyone for coming out this evening. As we said, we will make sure that we share no later than next Tuesday an FAQ document so that those of you that are watching from home or that will watch back on playback will have some of the information that we spoke about this evening. We hope everyone has a safe night, and if I could see all of members of the leadership team in the faculty room in about 2 minutes, that would be great. Have a great evening.